Like and follow if you love horror. Diana looked over at Joe Jack, who was eating chops and eggs and hash with cheese. Jira was right. This new world was strange, but Diana decided not to. She would not let it overcome her. She would accept it, learn from it, and live in it. Was it all that different than learning about the inner machinations of a killer's mind? That was no less foreign than this. Perhaps this world wasn't bound in science yet, but that didn't mean it couldn't be eventually. Diana Saperstein's whole life had made her feel like an outsider looking in, trying to understand what seemed to come naturally to everyone else. Personal connections, friendships, relationships, even just having a good time seemed odd when she was young. Learning to navigate a new world was inconvenient, but nothing new. She began to eat her waffle. I take it the card Mr. Ondosti gave you can only be read by magic? Diana asked. Nothing quite so dramatic. Jira held out the card, and Joe Jack burned it with a lighter. Words appeared on its face. Of course, such things do exist, but they're hard to mass produce, and you can purchase thousands of these on the internet. I feel almost cheated, Diana stated flatly, trying her best to make a joke of it. Jira chuckled at that. Magic, like many things, is a potent tool, but it lacks a certain level of practicality, he explained. Hence Inquisitor, Diana said, making a few connections. A simple program to decipher certain magical properties. Correct, Joe Jack said. And it provides an independent energy source, sort of like it has its own spark. Jira shook his head a little, but he looked oddly proud. It has its own spark. Mine. I programmed it. The program itself has a bit of me. Essentially, I am tied into the app, or my essence, mana, or spark. Right, you've all mentioned this spark before. Diana probed for more details. Indeed, Jira nodded. You either have it, or you don't. No one has figured out where it comes from yet, or why some are born with it and others aren't. But without it, you're neutral, no magic. Think of it almost like the starter of your car. You can't turn on the engine without the initial spark. And no one knows why anyone has it or how they get it. Diana repeated the information, attempting to probe deeper. Indeed, Jira said. Even the Magi of old tried to breed it into their family lineage, seemingly with no success. Many alchemists have tried to turn neutrals into casters. We call them the Spider Council. He shivered, although it certainly wasn't cold in the diner. Paul Pot was the worst of them, Joe Jack added. Wanted to weaponize magic, make legions of casters. He killed every mage in his country trying to crack the code, and millions of innocent people. It's completely random, Jira explained. I assure you both, nothing is random. We may never be able to see the connections, but everything is cause and effect. From the Big Bang up through today, everything is simply a reaction of another reaction stretching back to the beginning of time, Diana said flatly. Even with the addition of the new world she had stepped into, nothing would convince Diana that the world was pure chaos. Her new partners had admitted that magic itself was based on systems, like a kind of science. Don't count on it, Jira said dismissively. Remember, there's an entire layer of reality devoted to absolute entropy, no constant whatsoever. Diana thought about it, refusing to believe there wasn't some quantitative element to that as well. Such a thing might be difficult to process, but it wasn't outside the laws of known science. Diana determined that she needed to know more before testing any theories, and resigned herself to her mystical meal. It was indeed quite yummy. The van pulled up to a parking lot next to the highway that looked more like a dirt lot. A jet black Lexus sedan with blacked out windows sat in the parking lot. Not far off, they could see Mr. Ondosti staring into the waters of the Sims Bayou. Jira, Joe Jack, and Diana approached from behind, but Ondosti addressed them as though he'd heard their approach and could identify them by their footsteps. Welcome, he said. A moment and it'll be here. You're having it delivered? Joe Jack asked. You don't carry a party's worth of the most potent yay in the known universe on your person. Andasti still didn't turn around. You have it delivered by couriers. Joe Jack started to ask another question, but Jira held up a finger, and Joe Jack pocketed his hands and teetered on his heels. I hate waiting, he grumbled. I hate belly aching, Mr. Andasti contested. So the foursome stood there, waiting, Mr. Andasti staring up slightly into the sun like a lizard sunning himself on a rock. They waited an uncomfortably long time, no one speaking. The only one who knew what was happening was Mr. Andasti. He did love his theatrics. Finally, the water of the bayou began to bubble. A humanoid figure emerged. It didn't come out of the water so much as it was the water. The features were hard to make out as they were transparent and liquid. The only thing obvious about it were two yellow eyes that scanned the four figures. Master, it said in a gurgling but feminine voice, its eyes finally landing on Mr. Andasti. How are you now? He smiled. Still filthy. These vermin still dirty my banks, spill their tainted effluence in my body, their feeble attempts to correct their trespasses, empty and effortless. My heart bleeds for my humble servant, Andasti answered. I have not forgotten you or your enemies. You have delivered many to me, my master, she bowed. For you. The creature made of water gestured towards the bayou. A sealed plastic container about the size of a socket set floated to the surface, then towards the shore against the flow of the water. A small wave lifted it onto the banks, all the way to Mr. Andasti's feet. He picked it up and opened it. From it he took a yellowish brick that could easily be mistaken for a large stick of butter, only whiter. There were many more like it in the case. He placed the case back on the banks and the water lapped it up again and took it away. It disappeared into the murky bayou. The creature of water bowed again, then sank into the bayou. All right, let's go find a party. Mr. Andasti finally turned around and smiled. Before they could leave, Joe Jack needed to cement his plan with Miranda. He knew what he was in for, but Diana wasn't even prepared for not being part of the conversation. The voice coming over the phone was so loud everyone in the van could hear it, and Joe Jack frequently needed to pull his ear away to even listen. Even still, he winced. It was actually a surprise to Diana how logically and naturally Joe Jack wore Miranda down. It became more and more apparent that the hillbilly was no idiot, or simpleton. Sure, his talk was reasonably blue, but he was sharp as a tack. After a time, Miranda's voice began to show the tone of defeat, and the casual listener in the van could no longer hear her. It was clear that Joe Jack had satisfied her concerns, or at least overcome them. With that, the operation was set, and the group headed out for the camp. If there was one thing a camp was suitable for during the boiling hot Texas summers, it was parties. Guaranteed one would pop up at some point and likely draw the kind of crowd the Frankenstein's monster was after. They found their party with the first hour of trolling the lakeside. Mr. Andasti insisted on coming in his usual black suit, but Joe Jack and Diana dove into the undercover gear for their own outfits. Diana had never done undercover before, but Joe Jack didn't mind helping develop her persona. He cornrowed her hair, found her a faded Tech 9 t-shirt, then cut off the sleeves and collar. She had a thong uncomfortably pulled up her rear, its string riding in the waistlines of her ragged jeans. She wondered how any woman could deal with the unpleasant sensation of having a permanent wedgie. Joe Jack finished off the look with some fashionable Timbs, dangly bracelets, and earrings, and finally a ratty bandana. Joe Jack himself looked like he just crawled out of a trailer park, but Diana suspected these were just his regular clothing. He also insisted that they show up with a case of Pabst Blue Ribbon. Mr. Andasti shook his head at them when Joe Jack and Diana arrived at the party. You two look like cops, he said with a hint of disdain. Do me a favor. Do not speak while I let us in. The party was a large modern A-frame The party was at a large modern A-frame with its own water.